Todd has been well groomed as a spiritual teacher and as a speaker. And he shares this wisdom of art and science and spirituality to guide us back to the joy of aliveness and our common humanity. And you can find out more, and you'll want to find out more through the links that we share with you today. But please just take a moment to empty yourself so that you can make space for the beautiful, not just content, but the beautiful energy that he brings to every talk and every conversation. And please give a warm welcome to my dear friend, Todd Fink.
Beautiful people are not always kind, but kind people are always beautiful. Thank you so much, Maureen. Happy New Year. Thanks, Mia Sarah. Thank you, Eileen, for the beautiful music. Kate, thank you. John, thank you. Joni, Mari, Carly, that was beautiful. Regina, and anybody else who I may have forgotten. I'm very grateful for your gift of community and fellowship today. Yes, Maureen and I have had such wonderful conversations and meaningful conversations, inspiring conversations. She's my true friend. And I loved what Eileen shared in the song about like a true friend, because that really is the spirit of kindness. Kind, in one sense, is a category, is a type, and we are all humankind. So we need to strive to be both, because it is what is true about us. And the root of that word kind is kin. Kin means a relationship. Kin means with the feeling of relatives for each other. In different indigenous traditions and cultures here in the United States, there's a expression, all my relations. And this is not just about sentient life alone, but all of the environment, and to perceive the interdependence between us and the elements, for example. We could not exist even for one moment without the element of water. So to look out and to feel the distance between us is only apparent. The rivers and the water within them flowing are like our veins, because the water is our future blood. The trees are like our lungs in a literal sense, because the air is our future breath. And the soils, which we use up and damage and pollute and control and commodify, are like our skin, in the sense that the matter within becomes our future bones. So to be able not only to practice kindness, but to let it be a revelation of what is actually true about our interdependence. Another etymological root of kind is kund in Germanic languages, which means innate. And so that's what I'm getting at here, that there's some default sense in us of kindness, and it gets covered up by wrong ideas or incorrect perception. And I find this remarkable because in Sanskrit language, you have kundalini, and it's a powerful concept in yoga and Indian mysticism. Usually translates to serpent or snake, but only because it represents a coiled power or a latent power inside of the human being, hiding or dormant in the base of the spine. But I don't think of this too differently than kindness, which, when you observe all of the disharmony or discord or cruelty, it's really kind of a cover on top of this dormant power that we all have to feel what's true about our life, about our interconnection. So kindness cannot just be the blind act of doing something that looks good. It has to be love exposed, I think, for it to be genuine. So if you look up the definition of kindness, it gives three qualities: friendliness, generosity, and consideration. I like to think that all three must be there, that kindness, when it's genuine, is the synthesis of being friendly, being generous, and being considerate. And this last one is powerful because consider comes from Latin considerare, which probably meant to observe the stars, because con and sidereal, sidereal's like constellation or a heavenly body. But in the broadest sense, to consider means to take in to account the heavens, the cosmos, to feel ourselves as an expression of the whole, to engage with that awareness, with the stars. I mean, it could mean astrology, but it could also simply mean that there's a web of meaning and unity and threads, invisible threads of sympathy and empathy that go from one heart to every perceived object in the universe. I I called this talk the star virtue because, given that definition with consider, it's not just something that we are trying to manifest that's dormant within us, but we can also see it shining um, without us as well. It's like a compass. It's like a star. But just to speak a little bit more about what's genuine about kindness, or when it's genuine, this has actually been studied scientifically and psychologically. Researchers at the University of Sussex, led by Dr. Campbell Michaeljohn, set up MRI studies where subjects were engaging in kindness of two kinds. One where there was um, a clear reward for doing something good for another person. And another scenario, subjects were performing kind acts, but there was nothing in it for them. So the researchers differentiated this as strategic kindness and altruistic kindness. And even though the acts may look the same, the intention is different. And there are two totally different pathways in the brain between these different performative behaviors. Both involve some reward circuitry in the brain, but the strategic kindness primarily takes place in the reward centers of the brain. So it's almost more like drug-seeking behavior, or the kind of pleasure that we get by fulfilling desires. But in the altruistic kindness, it goes on to integrate and highlight other areas in the frontal cortex. So it's just kind of a beautiful correlation in the anatomy of the human being. We sometimes talk about the glow of kindness. So this is to build off of the brilliance of kindness that Maureen talked about before, but there is an actual warmth of kindness from the oxytocin that is released, which is a pro-social hormone, but it's also an opiate. So we do get high, in a sense, when not only when we're being kind genuinely, but also when we see it in others. And this was also studied at Harvard. It was coined by the lead researcher, Dr. McClelland, as the Mother Teresa effect. He created a study with 22 students, and they were shown one of two videos: a video about Hitler and some of the atrocities that perpetuated by him, and another group watched a 50-minute video of Mother Teresa and her nuns providing service to orphans in Kolkata in India. But meanwhile, the researchers are monitoring the saliva in the subjects, and specifically detecting levels of important immune markers and antibodies. And the study discovered that when people were observing kindness, it actually strengthens their own immune system. So there is a power in just witnessing the human potential. My interpretation of the study would probably be that we are wired for kindness. We've evolved through a very dangerous, violent world. There's still elements of this cruelty everywhere, but we're making progress, I believe. But when you see kindness, or when you feel that somebody is in kinship with you, your brain can reduce its fight flight instinct, or can activate its relaxation response in the parasympathetic nervous system, thereby redirecting resources to their prominent functions like digestion and immune functioning. So when we're stressed or anxious, our brain actually interprets that as a threat to our safety, and thereby uh, prioritizing survival over something like digestion. And the cortisol hormone actually suppresses digestion and immunity. That's why it's an immunosuppressant. That's why we use medications like corticosteroids to tamper down immune responses or autoimmune symptoms. But we would want our immune system to be working if we were safe enough, if we didn't have to deal with immediate threat. So that helps bring balance back into our body, and kindness itself can help achieve that. There have been other studies that show how random acts of kindness can be a powerful way to mitigate the effects of social anxiety, specifically school anxiety for kids, in studies where they perform random acts of kindness versus other types of interventions, that has been shown to be the most effective at helping kids feel positive about going back to school, probably because of the oxytocin that it releases, which helps people feel good about being around others and also motivates people into being kind themselves. So I said kindness is a revelation. It reveals a spiritual truth. And I want to conclude by sharing a story about how this has evolved in my consciousness. As Maureen mentioned, I spent time in India studying with my meditation teacher and other monastics and mystics from 2005 to 2006. And there was an incident that stands out in my mind when I realized something about myself in a very ordinary, unsuspecting circumstance. I was staying at this monastery, and part of the agreement to do the training is that you give some time to in service. And one day, the job was to remove debris from a building that was torn down, and so we were carrying bricks in baskets that were put on our head to another location on the property. And it was a very hot day in the jungle, and I became plagued by unhappiness. But as I continued to do this work and looked around looking for others to commiserate with, I found that not everybody looked unhappy. In fact, there was one gentleman who seemed truly in joy. He was whistling and kind of singing to himself as he carried these bricks in 100-degree heat. And that struck me as a clue, because from a scientific point of view, this can't be causing my unhappiness, this circumstance, if this fellow is not feeling the same way. It's not like gravity keeps me on Earth, but not two other people, so that inspired me to look at my own mind and see what the variable was. And with that little bit of self-awareness and mindfulness, I immediately recognized I have a strong desire to leave, specifically to be in air conditioning, to be at home, to be comfortable, to be happy. And and then I just gave that up because I already knew I'm not leaving. I don't want to leave. I already made this commitment, and that supersedes any whims that may come up intermittently. And then it stopped. And when it stopped, I too was happy. And this is what consistent practice of meditation has helped me to, I guess, finally see, maybe not all the time, but that there's always a story in my head about what I need to be happy. But when I believe that story, it actually leads to disharmony within myself and among others because of the phantom need to control that arises from this belief. But the story in our head is always a lie because true peace has no conditions, especially if it's spiritual. I'm not suggesting that conditions are good, the external conditions, or just or healthy. I'm just pointing out the socialized spiritual materialism that occurs within our own minds. That I would be happy in exchange for this. I would be peaceful in exchange for this item, this situation, this status. I can do things now not to be happy, but to be kind. And that includes myself. So maybe that looks like earning or trying or building a safer, simpler life to be kind to myself, or to make things fairer for others to what extent that I can, or to improve my health, or even save someone's life or save my own life, but not so that I'll be happy, so that this will be fair, so that this will be healthier, so that this will be kinder. And that was a really important shift for me. And when people wonder about calmness with me, uh, that's the secret, if there is one. I mean, it seemed like a secret for me when that clicked. And so when others are interested, I try to share this with them, that so they can appreciate it for themselves, within themselves. That if that narrative dies, um, I need this to be happy. Then a flower, a sunset, an animal, a bug, laughter, or another person can just bowl you over with magic or awe or beauty or love, because there's no grasping anymore for happiness in that moment. You are happy. Without striving for happiness, happiness happens. Life is then so much clearer, so much less complicated. And I think maybe this is what the Buddha meant with the Four Noble Truths. Not desire itself. I mean, how can we eat or take care of people or fulfill our responsibilities without some desire to get it done, but the desire to be happy? Because then we're conflating something like hunger with seeking peace, or like the search for oneself. Where can you go? Where can you look to find yourself? Where can the deer go to find the source of its own musk? And maybe all of this sounds kind of obvious. And if so, kudos to you. But it wasn't obvious to me. And I'm not by any means perfect at this kind of awareness and this kind of proclivity towards kindness. But I don't need to be. Nobody needs to be perfect at it, because you really only need to get it once. And then the very notion of this becomes amusing. It's sort of like saying, I'm not always perfect at remaining asleep. Well, you don't need to be. You're bound to fall asleep again, because being asleep is natural. Or I'm not always perfect at being lazy, or even remaining dead, because we know that the interlude is, putting on the garment of the body and playing all the roles that our body plays. But whatever is true, that was before we were born, And what is true after the body returns to the earth always is always and always will be. The last thing I'd like to share is this little reflection that I came up with called the star virtue, which hopefully just ties all this together. You may recall how Maya Angelou brilliantly contended that courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue consistently. Well, not to make this into a logical proof, but contrapositive to that courage, kindness is the most integral of all the virtues, because with kindness, you must practice every other virtue consistently. Kindness shines like the North Star. Polaris, that star, holds still because it's centered above the North Pole. So the entire northern sky wheels around it as the Earth rotates on its axis, making it such a timeless and reliable compass for the wayfarer. Yet, Polaris is only our 50th brightest star. Similarly, many human qualities may appear more luminous than kindness, but they all orbit kindness. And by that, I mean that each will return to kindness to give it moral aid, sort of like the time of alignment or after apogee in the orbit of a planet, which means it's no longer going away, it's coming towards. Otherwise, loyalty, honesty, friendship, strength, patience, you name it, and many other virtues, they cannot always maintain their same angle in the sky of our moral awareness. I mean, you can be loyal and thereby cruel. You can maintain a friendship which endorses cruelty. You can be patient and thereby complicit in cruelty. They have their moments of brilliance, like any star, but they can lead one in different directions, even southward, whereas Polaris is always at the same angle. So ultimately, values fulfill their purpose when they reorient to kindness and the true north of our loving potential. So thank you, everybody. Looking forward to conversing with you.
Wow, Todd, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I forgot to mention in your bio that you're a poet as well. And it's just so, I'm excited for the conversation. That's all I'll say about that. Thank you. You've filled us up and overflowing. And we have now John Ruiz, and who's going to do our little giving, and then we'll come back to have this conversation. So if you have something to share, bring it.
Hi. SpeakEasy is a non-for-profit community, and we exist on the generosity of our community members. We thank you for playing your part and for taking the opportunity to make a donation for today's daily bread. Your generous donations help us bring spiritual leaders, artists, and speakers to Sunday service and keep important conversations going. And so today, I invite you to go within and see what is yours to share. The donation link is in the chat, as well as on our website, SpeakEasySpiritualCommunity.com. Thank you for your generous support.